And today we're going to talk about how to navigate the dissertation during a pandemic. So I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm on a new location today. I'm actually on the West Coast, currently uh, handling some family affairs. And so I still wanted to do a check in with you all and talk today about how to navigate the dissertation during a pandemic. Just so you all know, like a lot of you all as doctoral students are just in one of the most unique positions that we've seen in our history, right? And so many of you are trying to figure out, how do I get through this process fast, because I have all these things I want to do after, but you haven't figured out a way to do it as fast as you want to go about this. So I have some strategy. I have some things I want you all to start thinking about over the course of this next couple of weeks to really propel yourself to really do have success with your dissertation in 2022. And again, as I will say, if you currently right now are writing your dissertation, whether that's in the proposal phase or you are already moving towards, past your proposal defense and collecting your data, there is no reason that you should not finish your dissertation in 2022. So today I want to talk about dissertating during a pandemic. It's just something that is so unique. You all have this very unique experience that you're trying to manage while getting through this. And I just know that you all are experiencing a lot. I see a lot from my doctoral students in my program, as well as those who are not in my program but are looking to figure out how to get through the process. I see a lot of the threads on Twitter, Instagram, and I really TikTok, and I just want to really be support for you all. So what you could do for me real quick before we go ahead and get started is share this with 3 other people that you know can find value. So if you have doctoral students that are your colleagues and your friends, I want you to share this with 3 people that you know that need support of getting through the dissertation process. And we'll go ahead and get started in one moment. And again, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I think it's something that we really need to be talking about right now, given what you all are experiencing with this process. Just give me 1 second, just pull up, make sure we're all good, going live here on Instagram. Make sure that you share this out. Again, new location for the next week or so, but I definitely wanted to do a check-in with you all. And again, today we're going to talk about how to navigate the dissertation during a pandemic. All right, here we go. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about, when we're thinking about navigating the dissertation during a pandemic, I want you all to start really thinking about sooner rather than later is that you have to give yourself some grace during this time. You have to imagine no one else is doing what you all are doing with this dissertation. Like, I don't have this experience that you all have. You all literally have, many of you have started your doctoral programs, post 2020, and you may be in a doctoral program that you may not have had a chance to even have any face-to-face contact with your colleagues that are in your program. So like, I really do feel for you. And I know deep down your professors and everyone else does feel for what you all are experiencing. And so with that, when you're doing your research projects, I know this is a very difficult time. But the first strategy and suggestion I want you all to start considering is that while you're trying to dissertate during a pandemic, I want you to give yourself some grace, because you all have to remember, again, you're doing something that no doctoral student is doing. And depending on how long we sit in this pandemic in this format, you all have a unique experience that you all can carry with you. And so, but I want you first all to give yourself some grace. I hear a lot of students who come to me very anxious about finishing. I know you have jobs on the line, all these things that are lined up for you. But you have to remember, you have to do this process right. As although you want to go fast, you just have to be mindful and give yourself some grace when things don't go according to plan. But I think a lot of times, if we don't give ourselves some grace, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get through this process. And so if you're someone who has felt like you've had pressure put on you by writing your dissertation, whether that be pressure you put on yourself, pressure from your family and friends, pressure for someone else, drop in the comments. Let me know. Just put pressure in the comments, just so I know that, and so you know that there are other people just like you who are experiencing this. So again, the word is pressure. Go ahead and drop that in the comments, because again, this process can be very isolating. But I want to let you know, for folks who are tuning, I want to let you know that you are not the only one that is experiencing what you are experiencing today. But you definitely do have to put work in, of course, and still move forward with the process. But first, I want you to start considering and give yourself some grace because it is a pandemic. You are trying to navigate this. Your faculty members are trying to navigate this. So not only am I talking about giving yourself grace, but then also other people in your process. Remember that your faculty members not only have you as an advisee, they may be working with 3 people on the low end to upwards of 10 or more people on the high, or even 20. I have some colleagues that work with 20 or more people on the high end. So you really have to start thinking about that as you're navigating the dissertation process. And I have Ron Miller on Instagram. He says pressure. Yeah, it's just it's very common, right? Like, and I don't want you to feel bad about it, but I want you all not to start keeping that pressure on you for so long because it will stifle your progress. And sometimes they say with pressure burst pipes, and I definitely don't want that to happen to you all during this process. Again, if this process was not in a pandemic, it would already be difficult, right? And so we're trying to navigate this in the midst of everything else going on in our personal lives. And so first things first, we have to give ourselves grace, you as a student, and then also everyone else that's involved in your process, particularly around faculty, right? Because this is around the time you're all trying to get meetings with your dissertation chair. And if not, go watch last week's video. So I give you some strategy and some game on like how to set yourself up to jumpstart your dissertation this year. And so if you set up those meetings, you might have a lot of pressure that you're trying to place or expectations that you're placing on your chair to get you out of the process. And sometimes it can be unfair to your chair. And this is just coming from someone, I'm never going to tell you anything that's not true. And from my position being a faculty member. And so I know what it's like on both sides, coaching doctoral students, but then also being a faculty member, having doctoral students of my own, and really seeing what's happening on both sides of the coin. So you really got to be mindful and really be supportive with your committee members. They're trying to manage everything as well. They have families, they're dealing with COVID just like you are. So I think this is the first thing first, we have to give each other some grace during this process. So that's first thing, right? But second, what I want to talk about is that I see this happening for a lot of students, and because of social media is really like amplifying this, right? You all have to now take the time. 2022 is your year to run your own race. And what I mean by that is that you literally have to put the blinders on and understand your process is your process. Whether it takes you 6 months or 16 months to finish, your process is your process. Your time is your time. And so I want you to be mindful of that because it can be very easily for you to see those posts. I always see those posts on like LinkedIn and stuff, and people say, "I'm excited to share. I defended my dissertation." And when you see those posts, I know for a lot of you, you might hit folks with the eye roll, like, "I'm tired. I don't even want to hear about that." And so with that, you really got to start thinking about you have to run your own race. It's okay to compare because we all do it. Like, don't get me wrong, I do it. We all do it, right? But you really got to start thinking about making sure that you don't kind of tune that all out, and that you have a timeline that you want to follow. You have your race. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. You know that you're going to handle the things you need to handle the way you need to handle them. And so that's going to be very important in order for you to finish this dissertation process and keep your sanity, because it can be very easy for things to go awry if you aren't running your own race and worrying about everybody else. And I always say, if someone who is really navigating the process successfully, they could care less about what other people are doing, because they know that at the end of the day, their timeline is their own timeline, and they don't have time to be focused on everybody else and everything else that's going on. So you got to start running your own race now, and I promise you, it will make things so much easier as you get through the dissertation. And so with that, so once you give yourself grace, you know that you have to run your own race. The third piece that I want you to start considering is that you're going to have to be willing, and you probably already done this at least once or twice, but you're going to have to be willing to modify your timeline multiple times. As you all know, research is changing by the minute. So what you could do yesterday in terms of research studies and research output is drastically changed by tomorrow. I might even saw this with a relative who was having a medical procedure done. Literally 2 days ago, they could have had visitors in their room, but literally because of COVID today, they changed that whole policy. So things are changing constantly. So as a researcher, you're going to have to be able to adapt to that change that's happening. And so what this looks like, modifying your timeline might look like modifying how you collect your data. It might be modifying, how fast you think you're going to write, because, I know for a lot of you all, and this is just something you have to consider, is that you have all these other competing interests going at you. So you have work, you got family, you got all these other things. And so it can very much delay your process if you're not mindful about adjusting your timeline. Like again, this process, you don't have to be perfect in it. It just needs to be done, but you want to do so in a way that you don't burn out. And I say adjusting your timeline and being mindful and being okay to adjust your timeline will be the difference between you finishing in a year versus you finishing in 3 years. And again, because things are changing so quickly, you got to be able to think on the fly and adjust your work and adjust your timeline. I think that's going to be so important as you navigate the dissertation process. In relationship to timeline, one piece of advice I want to give you about navigating the dissertation during this pandemic is the idea that you need to adjust the scope of your project. I know a lot of us have gone into it, particularly if you started your dissertation pre-COVID. You probably went into this doing some work with, if you're doing like any type of human subject data collection, you might, have been going into the field to collect your data at a research site. You might have been working with a school district. You might have been going to a college to collect your data. And at this point, things have changed drastically. So you're going to have to be willing to adjust the scope of your project. And here's a bonus tip, right? This is something that most people don't think about until it's too late. You actually want to make your project smaller in scope. It will make things so much easier for you because you're not trying to do all the things with your dissertation, right? If you look at any of my content, I talk about doing one thing and doing one thing very well to your dissertation. And then after that, you can do all of the great projects and things that you want to do. But it first starts with focusing on the one thing of your dissertation. And I see Holly has joined on Instagram. Hi, Holly. I hope all is well. And so if you're on at all, just drop me a note so I know who's tuning in right now, just so I can keep up with you all. But again, you really have to start adjusting the scope of your project. What some of my students have done that I've seen, not only my clients, but my personal doc students have been going from in-person to virtual interviews using Zoom, WebEx, some other, Google Meet, whatever other platform that they've done to collect their data differently. Some folks who wanted to do like in-person experiments have figured out ways to virtually do it or have been able to modify the scope of the project where that wasn't needed. I've had one client who started their dissertation in 2020, kind of like at the height of the pandemic. And what they were doing was they had a 3-article dissertation, and the last piece of the 3 articles was to actually interview leaders in another country, and on another island, I should say, not another country, another island. And so they could not go to the island safely. And so they had to modify the project and actually cut that last part out and redo some things and do like a extended literature synthesis, right? So this is something that you have to consider with your dissertation is really adjusting the scope of the project. Everything doesn't have to be done the way you intended. And as researchers, this always happens. And honestly, if this does happen to you in your chapter 3, your methods section, you should actually write about it. So there should be a section that talks about what you intended to do and then talk about what happened because of COVID and then what you actually did. Because what's going to happen 10 years from now, someone's going to come and read your study and they may actually go back and try to replicate the initial version, the original version of your study that you had. So you have a prime opportunity to really be a trendsetter in your field, but you need to document it. But first, you got to be willing to adjust the scope of your project. I promise you, if you go into this, your research right now, thinking that you're going to do exactly what you would do pre-pandemic, you're sadly mistaken, and you'll be frustrated, and you won't finish in the time that you want to finish in. You have to be willing to adjust the scope of your project. It'll make it so much easier. And here's the thing: your dissertation chair will be happy that you did the same. I'm trust me. And I see KCS Miller is on Instagram. I hope all is well. Definitely drop a note where you're coming from. But I want you all to consider that it's so important to getting through the dissertation process to be flexible with what you're doing in the dissertation. Because what would end up happening, I've seen this for a couple students, they decided not to change the scope and they said, oh, this will pass by back in, like mid 2020. And they're still writing a dissertation right now. A year and a half has gone by and they still haven't finished because they're unwilling to change. So if you're unwilling to change, just know that you won't finish. So there should be no complaints there. But if you want to get through this process, be willing to adjust the scope of your dissertation. And honestly, if you make it simpler, I'm telling you, it will get you through this process so much easier. The last thing I want you all to consider with this navigating the dissertation during the pandemic, right? And what I'm seeing from my students as well as colleagues is that you got to put your family first in this. We all want to finish. We all have timelines. You all are folks who are overachievers. Like you don't get to this point and not be an overachiever in some way. And so I know you all want to get through this process, do all the great things that you want to do, but you got to put your family first during this process, and especially right now. So I know things can change by the minute. I literally at the beginning of December, you all probably would know because I'm recording, you wouldn't even understand, but then my daughter caught COVID. And so that's something that you really got to start thinking about. That put into perspective for me, because literally we shut things down for 2 weeks to make sure that she was good. But you really got to start putting your family first. Again, the dissertation will always be here. You can get through this thing. It will happen if you continue to put work, but your family goes first, because at the end of the day, what's the use of having a degree if you're, if you like shunned your family in the process? So I'm always saying put them first, but set clear expectations about what you need from them in order to get through. So those are two different things. I know some people often say if I put them first, then I'm putting everything else to the back burner. But no, that's not the case. Put your family first, and then from there, you actually just start setting expectations and tell your family, hey, I'm going to be working on this dissertation from this time to this time. Can you handle this with the children? Or can you handle this, if you're taking care of a relative, or if you just need some support, you need encouragement, whatever it is right now that you need to go ahead and get that support from folks, because it makes no sense to go through this dissertation by yourself and be very lonely throughout the process. And again, for those who are just tuning in, I'm curious right now, because you all, if you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you're a doc student or maybe in your program or writing your dissertation. So I'd love in the comments if you can just drop what has been something that you have experienced so far during the pandemic, and what strategy or advice would you have for someone else that's watching this live today that you think could be very impactful for them as they get through the process? Please drop it in the comments, and I'll bring them up and talk to it live, because I think there's a common experience that's happening. And literally my colleagues, Dr. Charlotte Cupid, Dr. Montia Gardner, and Dr. Anton Tomlin. We have a book that's coming out probably next month or the month from now. You'll see me start promoting it. It's called Dissertating During a Pandemic. And in our book, Dissertating During a Pandemic, we actually have book chapters written by doctoral students who were writing their dissertation and or defended their dissertation after March 2020. And in the book, they chronicle their experiences, what went well for them, how they navigate the dissertation, what suggestions they have for other students, and just really provided a lot of strategy and insight in how they got through this process without losing their soul in the meantime. So that's something definitely to be in tune for as we move forward with the dissertation process. But you'll hear more about the book, Dissertating During a Pandemic, Narratives of Success from Scholars of Color. Because again, I think it's just so important for you all to start thinking about now and putting your plan in place, because it seems like this situation is not going anywhere. So you all need to start doing this and really thinking about it sooner rather than later. And for those folks, as always, we do provide support for you all through the dissertation process. So at the Done Dissertation, we ensure that doctoral students navigate the dissertation process in 1 year or less. And if you're watching this, whether on the replay or live, what I want you to do is grab a free guide that we're providing. It's if you go to www.dissertationmistake.com, you can grab your free 10 dissertation mistakes doc students make guide, and it provides strategies on how to navigate the dissertation process and not make the mistakes that I know, ensure that you won't finish the dissertation process and or secure that faculty position of your dreams. And so on Instagram, I see KCS Miller 93 says, I added job responsibilities, having a community of other doc students. Yeah, that's a fact. You definitely need that community piece. I think people forget about that. We get a lot of doctoral students who want to work with us at the Done Dissertation are looking for one-on-one coaching. We do not provide that. We provide group coaching, and it's because of what KCS Miller said. You need a supportive environment. While that one-on-one coaching is good, like, if we're in an environment just like this, me and you going back and forth, that's good for a little while, right? But it's important to hear other questions from other students, and I think that's where the magic happens. And also, because we work with doctoral students who want to become faculty members at some point, having that network of folks in higher education is how you get these positions. So we literally have curated an environment and a culture where you have access and support in our working with and collaborating with the next generation of faculty members, deans, presidents, provosts. So you literally have at your fingertips the ability to create these relationships now that will support your career for years and decades to come. And so that's what we're all about, the Done Dissertation, making sure that folks not only finish the dissertation, but are also able to navigate the process to get a faculty position. But what KCS Miller mentioned about needing a supportive environment, I think that is so important and it's often forgot about with the dissertation. So I want to say thank you for that comment and thought. I'm curious, what do others, any suggestions that others might have And again, you can go to www.dissertationmistake.com to grab your free guide to make sure that you get so that you learn not to make the simple mistakes that I find that doc students make that get them held up all the time. And on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you'll see it on your screen. And for my folks on Instagram, I'm typing in the chat so you all have it as well. But at this point, are there any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns that you all might have about the dissertation? Like, what are you all experiencing? Because again, I think there's some commonality between what you all have going on that you all are not considering. I know probably hearing it from someone else might be impactful as you're finishing up your process. And so I want to say thank you for those who are just joining. Uh, we talked about really, I gave 5 strategies on how to navigate the dissertation during the pandemic. And just to review, oh, perfect. Ron Miller says he got his guide. Perfect. And what I want to say is for those of you who are navigating this dissertation process, I have kind of 5 things to consider as you're moving forward. First is that you want to give yourself grace. And not only yourself, you want to give your faculty members grace because you all are trying to navigate this. Your faculty members are trying to figure out how to support you the best way they can, but they're also dealing with family, COVID, all these things, virtual learning for children, virtual learning for themselves, teaching, all these things you all are dealing with, they are as well. So you need to extend yourself and them some grace. It will take the pressure off of you and know that you will get done if you put the work in, but it may not happen as quickly as possible. You have to be okay with that at this point in time. The second suggestion is that you have to be willing to and start running your own race, right? A lot of times we see all these posts on social media. We see the folks, their stories are popping on Instagram. They're on TikTok celebrating, popping bottles because they finished a dissertation. And for a lot of us, that we could become disheartened, right? We're like, man, how did they finish? They started when I started. Or my favorite is when I get a lot of doc students to come to me and say, "Oh, you work with a colleague of mine, and he started before I did," and they're like a little bit salty about it, right? And they're like, "Oh man, I should, I missed the opportunity because someone who started before me finished." Or started after me, finished before me. And so I know a lot of y'all may be experiencing that, but you have to recognize that you have your own race to run with your dissertation, and you have to be willing to accept that race. And just to give you all, I'm only speaking from experience, right? So when I wrote my dissertation, I wrote it in 7 months. So from August 2014, I finished writing the complete draft of the entire dissertation in April 2015. And from April until October of 2015, when I defended, approximately 6 months, I waited because I didn't meet the deadline for a May 2015 graduation. So I had to wait all summer, and I came back in the fall, and that's when I defended. So again, that is something that you have to really reconsider and think about now as you're navigating the dissertation process. And I was disheartened, right? So what I did over that 6 months is I started writing for publication. And so by the time I defended my dissertation, I literally had I had 9 articles under review, but I had 3 articles come out, and I actually cited them in my dissertation. So if you look up my stuff in ProQuest, you can go and find out and go look, and you can see where I'm citing myself, my 2014 and 2015 work. And so again, you really got to start thinking about and doing this early and often because you have to take advantage of the opportunities. But again, this comes from running your own race. And a lot of people don't want to do that because you want to, see everybody. You see everybody finishing. You want to be just like them, but your time will come. I promise you. But you just have to put the work in. The third piece that I talked about is that you have to be willing to modify your timeline, and you have to do this multiple times. Like you all probably went into this thing thinking, "Oh, I'm going to write these chapters in a month," and you realize it's taking you a year to get stuff done. And sometimes it's not because of your own work ethic or the work that you put in. It's because you might be working with faculty members who are dealing with certain issues on their end. You might also be dealing with committee members who are dealing with their own issues, and you also are navigating this as well, right? You have family to take care of, and so you got to think about and modify your timeline. I just think that's so important. And with your timeline, another aspect that you want to think through is that you need to adjust the scope of your project. The sooner you start adjusting the scope of your project and make it smaller in scope, the quicker you will finish. Like I know we all want to do these large comprehensive studies, but here's the secret, right? Honestly, when you get your doctorate, nobody's like, some people ask, what was your dissertation on? The people who care about your research, but usually it's after what are you doing after that? And so you want to start setting yourself up for future projects, but it all is contingent on you finishing. So I would say if you had to think about your research as a huge project, break it down into multiple pieces, and then I would suggest for your dissertation to take one of those pieces That's the focus of your dissertation. And then all the other pieces that you want to do is what you will focus on after the process. Because I just find that, you spending so much time trying to have this big project for what? Like, I want you all to finish. We want to get you the letters behind your name. Like 2022 is your year to finish your dissertation. So there's no need to let this get in your way of all the other things that you want to do. And then lastly, my suggestion for you is to really put family first. And I found it to be where people sometimes think that they can't put family first and finish. But as I've mentioned before, you need to put your family first. And then what you want to do from there is to really start thinking about and really considering their feelings, what they're going through, but then also setting up expectations with them about how you are going to proceed through this process. So for some of my folks, some of my clients, that's having the conversation with the spouse, having a conversation with the partner, having a conversation with the children, whoever it is that's a part of your process, and really telling them, hey, I'm going to have to sacrifice these particular times because I'm trying to get to my goal. And again, if you're watching this and you're working on your dissertation right now in 2022 and your coursework is done, you have all the prerequisites done, and you're just working on your dissertation, there is no reason why you can't finish this year. And that includes getting your data collected. There's no reason why you can't finish. And so I want you all to start really thinking about this, and your family comes first, and then you just need to set expectations with them. And then I have no doubt in my mind that you will finish this year. And so with that, as we wrap up, I would love to hear if you have any questions. I have about 5 minutes or so that I can stay on and grab any questions that you might have. I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in so far. I see you got a couple folks on Instagram, as well as some folks on Facebook and on YouTube. As well, shout out to anybody in the Velocity Group coaching program who is watching, because we have these streamed live in our actual coaching programs of private group. So, and then what they get to do, they have the lucky, they can ask questions and I can go follow up with them in a different way that you all may not be able to just in this live format. But any questions, comments, or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comments. And for some reason, depending on your settings on whatever platform you're watching this on, your comment may not show up to me on my screen, but I will go through and check all of them and make sure that you all are all situated and that we answer all of your questions. And again, for those who need support to get through the process, I want you to grab our free 10 dissertation mistakes guide. And this guide provides support for you on how to navigate the dissertation process and secure the faculty position, but not make the mistakes I find a lot of doctoral students make that ensure that they don't finish the dissertation and they sure enough don't get an interview for a faculty position. And there's some pieces that you can be doing right now if you're waiting for feedback from a chair or committee member that you can put in place right now that'll get you one step closer to finishing your dissertation this year. And I'm just doing one more check. I don't see any questions. So with that, good people, I want to say thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. Shout out to Jada Suber. She will be a special guest on our Done Dissertation Office Hour episode. It will stream this Thursday at 4 p.m. on Facebook and LinkedIn. And she is such a phenomenal doctoral student who is working on her doctorate, and she's a specialist on the peanut allergy. And just like you all get to learn about her journey, about how she's navigating the dissertation, how she's doing her research in a pandemic, what that looks like being in a lab environment. So definitely tune in for this coming up on Thursday so you can learn more about future Dr. Suber's work, because she's doing amazing things in the field. But again, if you all need support, don't go at this alone. Feel free to reach out to us. Again, I'm Dr. Ramon Goins with the Done Dissertation, where we demystify the dissertation process so that you can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. And if you need support, feel free to reach out to us. Visit our website at www.thedonedissertation.com to learn more about what we offer. And, right now our January cohort is closed for recruitment, but we will be recruiting for May coming up soon. And we have a special announcement for you all coming up in the next about month or so. But we are excited to share this with you, but just get ready because you all are going to want to jump on this opportunity when we provide it to you. So again, I want to say thank you all so much for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.